Hey YouTube, thanks for joining me. I don't make these videos very often, but I needed a forum to share my views and perspectives on some things from experience. I've lived some circumstances that I would have rather not, and I wasn't able to get any support or help with the difficulties that I was dealing with. There is sexism in the United States towards men who are victims of crime, especially if you're a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault, and that has kept me from getting any kind of assistance with anything. I went and tried to get legal aid as I could remember things that happened to me and to people that I loved. I was in a unique situation for many years, and that situation largely ended when my spouse died. And I learned that if you're a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault and you come forward as a man, especially if there's multiple individuals involved in these circumstances where you got hurt by people, what they will do is they will gang up on you, particularly if you have children, and they will file false reports to social services and law enforcement to victimize you a second time, and a third time, and a fourth time, and to violate your civil rights in the course of their investigations, especially social services. Child Protective Services will violate you, and they will search your home without your consent. You won't be advised of your civil rights. They'll try to tell you who you can and can't date. If you're anywhere on the LGBTQIA spectrum, they will demand that you and your family come in for interviews, often multiple times, even if nothing was found the first or second or third time. And this will just go on for years and years and years and years and years. So long as you have anything they can use to locate your physical whereabouts. If you have a lease, if you have a utility bill, if you have your mail forwarded to your actual physical location by the Postal Service, and you update your public address on your driver's license and your bank account, anything that's tied to public records that leaves a paper trail electronically, especially utility bills and leases and updating your driver's license or changing your mailing address with the Postal Service, all that stuff becomes a matter of public record. And they'll continue to harass you even though you're not doing anything wrong. There's no neglect or abuse occurring. You're not a criminal, you're a victim. And maybe your family are victims too of something that happened, or some things that happened that you did not have any idea were going on. You know, it could be an adult relative, or it could be something that happened to you, or multiple things that happened to you that you couldn't remember because the specific methodology used in the commission of the crime against you. They don't care. Especially in the South. If you're in the southern part of the United States, any of the conservative red states, you're not going to get a lick of help. They will persecute you. Police will be rude to you. And if they can't physically locate you as a crime victim, when you start coming forward and making statements, either to a third party, like a victim's services nonprofit, or your senators, or a government representative trying to get help with an agency, or just to make somebody aware. You're writing to somebody to make somebody aware of what's going on. They will use what you are telling them as an excuse to endlessly try to harass you. And law enforcement and random public stops traffic stops will get angry with you because they can't physically locate your whereabouts. That does not mean that you've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean that you're guilty. When you're affected by certain situations, especially repeatedly, and you're a crime victim, the number one thing that you want is to be left alone. If you can't get the specific types of assistance that you're seeking, you want to feel in control of your life, and you want to be left alone, as do any other people involved in those circumstances. They want to move on and be happy. In states like Texas, male victims will lose everything. They will. You can be all cut up, have disfigurement. You can have a horror story. You can tell them, hey, I was drugged. I was raped by multiple people. I suffered from amnesia. A loved one of mine got attacked by someone using drugs. They suffered amnesia. Another person got attacked by a predator that was using drugs. They suffered amnesia. They had severe post-traumatic stress disorder. All these different things. There's so many different things you could tell them. And you'll still get denied legal aid. They will force you. They will try to order you into therapy and make you spend your money and take time out of your day, spend your gas, put wear and tear on your vehicle. They'll force you to commit to doing services that end up putting you as a victim of crime at expense. And they get downright hostile. They'll try to use coercion and threats. If you're in a relationship, they'll try to break up your relationship if you're not doing anything wrong with that person. That person's not part of the original circumstance that happened. Simply because you're with somebody who's same sex or somebody who is on the LGBTQIA spectrum in terms of gender or sexuality. And all these different injustices end up getting visited on you. As somebody who's male at birth, coming forward was one of the worst decisions that I ever made. They didn't help me in any way. The perpetrators of crimes against me and people that I loved, very serious crimes, violent crimes, special crimes, turned around and they would make things up, and they would simply just throw as much mud at us as possible, trying to discredit everything I had to say as an individual. I married into a very dysfunctional situation. I'm going to put it that way. That's the light way of putting it. There was a generational problem going on within my spouse's family. I had no idea that it was happening. And I was really, really horrified and sickened that multiple people would allow something like that to go on, where someone was getting hurt very badly, assaulted in a very explicit type of way. You don't attack sleeping people, You don't do that to people. I suffered attacks from multiple people while asleep. And they used drugs in the commission of their crimes. And none of those people were held accountable. They didn't go to jail. They didn't go to prison. I don't think that they suffered much financial consequence, if any. And I ended up being forced out of my home, not once, but twice, via these calls, these false reports. And it ended up being a very bad circumstance for me that would not end. It's to the point that I have an aversion to contact with certain authorities because of what happened and because of the way that they were used as a weapon against me as a victim. Both as a child and as an adult. People tried to develop a false representation of who I was as a very empathic, sweet, caring person. And they tried to use the same authorities that were tasked with my protection as a vulnerable individual, as a small person, to hurt me, to terrorize me, and to scare me. And those people came back when I was an adult and I encountered another group of individuals, where these things were going on. And they did the same thing again. They tried to destroy me and my family after my spouse killed herself to be with a sexual abuser, somebody who had been abusing her since childhood. I still haven't gotten legal aid. I sent out over 700 letters a few years ago, back in 2021, to every bar attorney in Harris and Fort Bend County, because those are the two biggest counties as far as the lawyers that were on the state bar. And I applied 5 times with 3 different offices for Lone Star Legal Aid and was denied. My son was denied even though he was attacked when he was 5 years old by a pedophile. And he was hospitalized by that attack in the ICU. He spent 3 days in the hospital. We didn't get legal aid. We did not have any power over the process or control over what was going on. Our civil rights were violated. We weren't respected. Law enforcement was rude to us. Social services was rude to us. And it's very difficult to rebuild my life because of how they forced me to live through those invasive and abusive processes against us as victims of crime. I haven't found any empathy. Very, very few people have cared. People hear of the circumstances that we experienced and they tend to view me as just damaged. Even though I'm a great person and I help people at most opportunities, without overextending myself in the process, of course. And people don't appreciate, the impact of that, the betrayal. And then the system intentionally, by design, failing you. And not only failing, but treating you in a malicious capacity, using their authority. That's why in the past they had groups of people that functioned in a nonprofit capacity, usually people who didn't even have a formal front for what they were doing, who were operating a program called Children of the Underground, specifically because the system was being used to harm victims of crime, children in particular, who were escaping from horrific abuse and needed to be protected, along with sometimes their parents, or one parent, usually, not always. These problems don't exist in a vacuum. There are so many others out there in the United States who are affected by these circumstances that I've described to you, especially in Texas and in the South. They'll sit there and they will protect pedophiles at the top levels, like Epstein and Trump and their friends, rich and powerful people, conservatives. And then you're sitting there as a victim just trying to be left alone, and you can't even accomplish that. They'll chase you off your land with harassment, endless investigations when you're not even doing anything wrong. You're literally just sitting at home watching a movie or TV most of the day. You're working, you're not on drugs or alcohol, there's no abuse or neglect occurring. And they will harass you on a repetitive basis every 3 to 4 months, sometimes more frequently than that. And then they'll be visiting your kids at school without your consent or notifying you, questioning them in interviews after pulling them out of class. There's nothing occurring, there's nothing going on. They use the fact that the kid has behavioral issues because of ADHD and autism as some kind of justification for suspicion that there's some kind of failure in parenting occurring where there's none. And people end up being subjected to just a railroad process, being grilled and run over and over again as victims of crime, victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, or rape, child rape, etc. People who experience that stuff should not be violated by the authorities. You shouldn't be harassed endlessly. When you say, hey, if you're not going to help me, leave me alone. Don't try to locate me, Don't try to locate those that I love. Don't try to harass me. Don't try to question me against my will. Don't touch me. I've had cops touch me when I hadn't even done anything. I'm sitting in my car working. I was working 60 hours a week doing pickup and delivery. And they want to come and run my plates. I'm like, okay, fine, run my plate. I don't have any warrants. I haven't done anything. I'm sitting here. I haven't committed any crime. Car's got a little bit of damage in the front. I was missing my front fender. My hood was gone because recent accident. I had full coverage insurance for the liability aspect of it. Car was high mileage. I didn't get it fixed because I didn't have the money. They see me bending over and they give me a real suspicious look through the window, like I'm doing something wrong, just bending over to scratch myself inside the car. They hadn't stopped me. They were just doing a real close pass to my car. And they ended up pulling me and my family out of the car while I had invoices in hand to demonstrate, hey, I'm working. I'm not committing a crime by sitting in a parking space. It's not metered parking. Rich area, that we were in. And I was just tired of my boundaries being violated. We got searched. They separated me and my family. We all got questioned. They kept asking me, why are you here? Why are you here? Dude, I'm working. Yeah, I'm far from my home address, but I am working. What do you want? So, I updated my address, and they still want to give me a hard time, even after updating it. They can't locate people who are never home because they're always working, And there's no issue with that. It doesn't make you a criminal. I just want to be left alone. 8 years in, I just want to be left alone. Can't get legal aid. Talking about it with them doesn't help. Try to get reforms in place to protect crime victims against harassment by law enforcement or social services. That's what I write about. Because experiences like what I described, getting pulled out of the car, separate occasion, I had them stop me walking home from the store with purchases, and they took my receipt. They got real pissed off with me because I left them an anonymous internet review. I have a right to speak out against these injustices. I've had so many things happen where law enforcement has abused me, violated my civil rights. Riding down the road on a bicycle, I got pulled over by police simply for riding down the shoulder on a bike, going home from my job in the snow. Because I didn't have a car to get back and forth, and I was poor. I was a poor kid. And then there was another situation that came up where I was just observing a traffic stop from across the highway. I wasn't even on the public right-of-way. I was just watching them from like 300 feet away. sitting on my bike. And after the guy is done searching the vehicle that he's searching, I wasn't videotaping or recording or anything. I was in a public safety program. This guy circles back to me by doing a U-turn, cutting across all the sold yellow lines and everything, violating traffic law himself in the process, and parks his cruiser in front of me and lights me up, and then proceeds to touch me and search me without my consent and run my identification when I hadn't even committed a crime. You know, in multiple states, I've experienced that treatment, that sort of thing, and I'm literally not even doing anything wrong when it happens. Law enforcement thinks it's their implied right to search and to touch and to assault because it is constitutional assault. It's a violation of constitutional law to touch someone without permission. You know, medical professionals, they have to get consent forms to treat before they even touch unless it's a life and death emergency. You know, and law enforcement doesn't feel they need to ask permission. They just abuse people. People who have been raped, people who have been drugged against their will, hurt with weapons. I mean, look at me. You know what I mean? You see this? Look at that. Somebody cut my face while I was sleeping. And that's just one of many things that I had to endure. I'm not a career victim. I want basic decency. And we've got a bunch of people who are executing the offices of law enforcement and even in social services who are suffering some kind of empathy disorder. They're psychopaths or they're sociopaths. And you argue as an American simply for the right to be left alone after people have hurt you. And you can't even get that. You can't even get that. Simply trying to be left alone. You and other people who've experienced harms from people. They want to make demands of you, and they want to place service demands on you to get you to go do things that don't help you. They expense you as a victim of crime. It creates uncertainty because people want to make their own assessments. They want to make demands of you. They want to question you when you haven't done anything. You answer their questions, they're still not satisfied. And they want to question those you love and make them feel insecure. They make you feel insecure. And sometimes, in the process of all that, even if you've done nothing wrong, all that going back and forth, you have to have a source of income to pay for that. Gasoline has to be paid for. You're missing work. They're not paying for your insurance if you have to go to the doctor. They're not paying for your medical care. They're not paying for your health coverage to get medication if you've got health impacts from being affected by crime, which I do. There's so many different things. They just expense the shit out of you. A long time ago, we got involved with the state. This is 14 years ago now. And by the time it was over with, they had expensed me while I was making $12,000 a year take home. And my wife was working 2 jobs, working 60 to 70 hours a week. When we were going to school, both of us were, between a couple of classes a semester and as many as 4 or 5 classes a semester. They expensed us all of our cash savings. It was something like $32,000, and they left us almost $14,000 in debt. I had to miss work. I almost lost my job because I was missing work for court. And it was a simple thing. They didn't help. They didn't support. They made things worse. They turned families into a business in Texas. I asked them for help. As a crime victim, I asked them for help. Social services and law enforcement. And they wouldn't give us anything. They wouldn't give me anything. They're evil. they're not, you shouldn't call them for help. Only in the most dire of circumstances should you call law enforcement or social services for assistance of any kind, because they will re-victimize you. They might even add to it or make it worse. They might come back at you like, bam, you know what? I'm going to blame you for what happened to you. Even though you didn't do anything, I'm going to blame you somehow. I'll just make something up, you know? And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to keep bothering you over and over again, questioning you. I'm going to tell you that I'm watching you when you're going back and forth to the store. I actually had a cop tell me that. He told me that he was watching me and my family, and he had been for the last 8 months. Yeah, that was in September 2025. Just going back and forth to the store, buying groceries, not out there doing drugs or drinking. I don't drive anymore. I stopped driving because I get tired of being harassed by law enforcement. And every time that I get pulled over, they give me a hard time. They demand to know, a lot of different things they'd question me about. And I said, look, I'm not doing anything. I don't have a criminal history. I'm not on drugs. I'm not an alcoholic. Why are you bothering me? Why? And all that stems from being a victim of crime and writing to my government representatives, my senators and others higher up, tell them, hey, I had these things happen to me. These things happened to people that I loved. Bad things. Stuff I won't even specifically detail in this video because it's graphic, it's terrible. And why haven't you stopped these other people who knew this was going on and were involved in this? Why do you let them use anonymous reporting? They've banned that in Texas now. I've written so many letters about specifics regarding the situation. Very detailed stuff, nasty. To people, to tell them, hey, you have criminals who are literally doing these things here, and the victims are going to get help. They're trying to get help. People who have survived these things are trying to get help, and the criminals are coming back and trying to use those same authorities to attack victims and harm them further beyond the initial crime with uncertainty instilling experiences. Why are you letting this happen? After extensive correspondence, I saw them make some changes to policy. I'm not saying I'm solely responsible, but after looking into it, they were able to verify what I was saying. And they were used as a weapon against me and others as innocent persons who were victims of crime. And I could not get a lawyer. I needed a lawyer to represent me and others, people who were underage, that were victims of crime by members of my former spouse's family, and on an unrelated basis when our property was affected by crime. You don't burglarize the home of a family that has small children, and you're not going to sit there, and you don't get to turn around and file reports to social services because the victims of the burglary go to law enforcement to seek to be made whole and get protection to prevent further crime victimization from occurring. It shouldn't be lawful in any of the 50 states for someone to go to social services and file a child welfare report against a family that's been burglarized by the same people filing a report, or had violence used against them to drive them off their land, out of their home. That happened to us. We lost our house. It's gone. The house that we had in Texas, we lost it. I went back there to check on it a couple of times, and I got physically chased away along with my kids that were in the car. And law enforcement went out there, and they talked to the people responsible. They didn't bring any charges. And I said, look, Place these people under surveillance. This is one of several situations. This is just one specific circumstance that I'm listing here. The other stuff is much worse. Why wouldn't they help us? Why were they used to harass us instead? I'm answering the questions they have. I provided proof of my claims. Why is it that people who are affected by those situations can't get help? It's by design. It's by design. You have a system in Texas and in the United States being run by people who are complicit with crimes, sex crimes against children, sex crimes against adults, and concealing those things and silencing victims. That's why they let these people file false reports. It goes all the way to the top. The people who are involved in these things, some of them are, executing roles in public office. Sometimes their law enforcement is complicit with it. Maybe their families are doing it. Maybe they're doing it. There's so much that has to happen. So many people have to be complicit when those things are happening to make them possible. And they don't always know. Not everybody knows exactly what's happening, but enough people generally find out with things like that are ongoing that somebody at some point should have intervened if it was a bad situation to stop what was happening because of the harm that was being done. And as I have tried to speak out against these injustices, people have tried to harm me and my family. When I go to say, hey, I'm going to report this crime that you committed against me, they'd say, well, I'm going to make up a report against your children, against your family. And it's the point that it became an almost daily thing for me to write letters to someone in government with authority on a much broader basis, asking them to address these types of circumstances from a legislative standpoint so that those reprisals could not continue. And what that is that's DARVO. That's Deny, Attack, Reverse, Victim, and Offender. And this is a well understood thing. This is not a new thing. And it comes to the point that to ensure that you are not harmed further, that those you love are not harmed further, you have to take steps to ensure your anonymity, to ensure that people cannot simply, pay Intellius or some other service a fee and then readily drive over to your house based off of doing a public records search. I'll tell you something. If law enforcement and social services can find you readily, the criminals can find you too. Okay? People who are smart, that are determined, all they have to do is put your name into a search on Intellius or one of these other people finder services and pay between $50 and $100 on the higher end, and on the lower end as low as $10 to $20. They can get your current phone number, they can get your address, they can find out what kind of car you drive, what year the car is, what color it is. There's a lot of different things they can learn for very little information because of the way that information is bought and sold today. Your DMV records, that information gets sold to other private databases that are not government related. And the state makes money selling that information, So there's a lot of stuff you have to take into consideration. But I know it may seem that I meander with this, that I've kind of jumped around with the discussion here, but it all circles back to, what life is like for somebody who's been a victim of crime, like significant crime, special crime, violent crime, and their family because they couldn't get legal assistance. I lost a house that's currently appraised for $225,000, and at one point it was appraised for as much as $330,000. I financed it at $112,000, and I put $15,000 down, and I lost it. It's gone. because I was a crime victim there. My family were crime victims, and we could not get legal aid. When I made my lender aware, they placed my loan with a predatory servicer that stopped accepting payments and forced the homeowner's insurance to lapse, forced the loan into default, and then they initiated foreclosure proceedings, and they ruined my credit. My wife was a victim of child sexual assault and assault as a young woman, as an adult. And it continued until her father died. And she became a perpetrator of violent crime because of that. I didn't know. Because she would do some of these things, a lot of these things, when I was asleep. Or while I was out of the house. And she developed criminal pathologies. And she developed something that was like an electric complex or Stockholm syndrome or both, and killed herself. When her abuser died, she began trying to commit suicide immediately when he died, her main abuser. I had no idea that circumstance was going on. I didn't know about any of that. I got blindsided. She was dishonest with me from get-go, and I was just viewed as a type of entertainment, like a placeholder or a filler for somebody else, you know? And I made the appropriate people aware of everything as I learned it, everything. There's no help. I couldn't get any legal help. So now 8 years on, I've continued to share with someone, and I've kept my distance from all the people that were involved in those circumstances that had awareness or knew or had direct involvement. And I just always I want to be left alone. People only contact to try to initiate an invasive process and questioning, and they always want to contact in person. And I have a serious aversion to direct unscheduled contact with people, even like neighbors, people who I don't know, randomly approaching me in public. I'll talk to them, but that stuff makes me very uncomfortable. I'm very introverted, and when I was a little kid, 5 or 6 years old, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I get overstimulated, on the autism spectrum. My wife was on the autism spectrum. Maybe high functioning autism, but between DARVO and being highly introverted and having people try to bully me throughout my life, I have a strong aversion to contact with people. Outside of an occupational role, I don't generally associate with friends or neighbors, etc., etc. I prefer to just stay at home and work on my place, and I want peace. There's a lot of people who can say the same. I want peace because I've been through a lot of shit. I've been through hell. And it shouldn't be the case that I have to hire a lawyer or get a restraining order to enforce that demand for peace. You can't rebuild your life when you're in a constant state of worry and uncertainty, even though you haven't done anything wrong. And that's what I had to deal with for years. I had very few people in my life that loved me, and I'm not going to lose the few that I do love, or even entertain the prospect of somebody trying to make up something to facilitate that, simply because they want to make money off our suffering. Don't cooperate with people who come to your home without a warrant or court order. If you're a victim of crime and you've reported it at length and you sought assistance and they try to engage in DARVO, the perpetrators do, tell law enforcement, social services, hey, you need to present a warrant signed by a judge stating probable cause and reasonable articulable suspicion, or you need to get off my property, you're trespassing. They're not there to help you. They're not going to pay your bills. They're not going to pay for your medical expenses as a crime victim. If you've been physically harmed, you have an injury, you know, they're not going to help you. They don't care. They're evil. The state of Texas and the United States in general want to profit off people's suffering. They will further harm you and expense you as a victim of crime, as a survivor of violent special crimes, even sexual assault. They don't care what happened to you. You can ask them for all kinds of assistance. They're not going to give you anything. They won't help you. They might give you something. Maybe. There's a slim chance they might give you something if you're a woman. But if you're a man, we're just going to lay it out for you plainly. They're going to tell you to fuck off. They're going to tell you, fuck you. And they're going to be rude to you. They're going to be rude. Sorry. And they're going to try to take what you have by expensing your time and trying to consume your resources, demanding you go to visit with people at CASA or go to a child welfare office to be interviewed, have your family interviewed. Or law enforcement is going to try to repeatedly question you. I experienced all of that. It's completely inappropriate. It's the point that the process was so repetitive and there was so much of that was occurring that we experienced that we couldn't live. We couldn't live. I lost my job. I got very, very sick for an extended period of time, for several years, from stress. I was having anxiety-induced asthma. It was so bad that I was having to go to the hospital because my heart was going under stress. The doctors told me, you need to see a cardiologist. You know, your heart is under serious stress. I was, 28, 29 years old. Between 28 and 30, well, the worst of it was happening. And I was so stressed out, I was having constant asthma attacks, and I was coughing uncontrollably all the time because I could not get the assistance that I was seeking, and the system was being used to attack me as a victim of crime, along with my family, one of which was also a victim of serious crimes. A minor should always get access to legal assistance, unconditionally. If I'm, 5 years old and somebody is advocating for me, I should always get legal assistance as a victim of violent crime. It always should have been provided. And somebody seriously messed up. Lone Star Legal Aid, they screwed up. They did. I don't know what the hell is going on over there, but they need to be investigated. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my perspective. I'm trying to get reforms in place. It's too late to save myself from real estate loss and job loss and investment loss. All that stuff's gone. I had tens of thousands of dollars in cash savings and in 401k retirement funds, and all that's gone now. All of it. I ended up on survivor's benefits because my spouse was the main provider. I put her through college twice, and when she killed herself, our income dropped by 80%. I was working, but I was working for health insurance. And the system, children's services and law enforcement, were used to try to wipe us out with great success. People who were committing crimes against us perceived that we were acutely vulnerable and that we were afraid, and they would initiate swatting calls and false reports. And it was to the point that it was happening. It happened at least, I would say, between 15 and 20 times, if not more. It's probably still happening today. But I told them, I won't allow any physical contact. I'm not going to entertain any visits with me or my family. Don't contact me. If anybody contacts you, I will contact you to tell you what I need to tell you as I can remember it. And you've destroyed our lives. They destroyed our lives, is what they did. I don't feel safe in America anymore. I don't feel safe going outside. I feel worried all the time with the way that certain authorities are behaving across the United States. I have a preoccupation with it now. It's not paranoia, it's justified because of how they've treated us. It's insane what they've put us through, and what they're doing to other people, innocent people. I've had neighbors complain to me about being stopped by local police simply for being black or brown, walking to work or going to or from the store, and asked if they're homeless because they're walking and they're people of color. You have a lot of things going on out there, and people who don't have family are suffering especially bad. They are. They're affected by these circumstances I've described especially bad. And when you have young people in your family that you love, people who are under 18, there are bad actors out there. There are malicious people who will try to use child welfare services anytime there's a disagreement or they do something wrong to you, they commit a crime against you or your family in order to harm you and in order to generate expense for your family and to scare you into being silent, being complicit with allowing yourself to be victimized the first time and possibly subsequently other times. That was what they wanted. My in-laws wanted to be able to use me physically, and I wouldn't allow it. I would not allow my mother-in-law or other people to do that. I had a proper view of marriage. It wasn't an open marriage. She'd been brought up in an improper situation, and it allowed her to have the mindset that sleeping with other people was permissible behavior, and it went way beyond that. It was so much worse than that. But none of what I've said here is justification to be bothered. It's not probable cause. It's not a reason for people to exploit the information, I guess you could say, to justify harassing me further, bothering me further. Thanks for listening once again, and I hope that things change in America. I don't think that they will. I think that we're going to have to switch over from having Republican governance to having something like a socialist, libertarian government. We need a libertarian government, I think, because then they'll guarantee certain basic provisions for people, like universal basic income and universal health care. If I had had that, as these things were happening to me, so much else would have been different. My health wouldn't have suffered so much. I wouldn't have lost my house. I wouldn't have been forced out of my house, my neighborhood. My real estate, my land, and my home, my first-time home purchase for my family and I would not have gone to foreclosure. If I'd had access to legal aid that was guaranteed. This could have been stopped years ago. And instead, we ended up being victims of our real estate company too, and local law enforcement and social services, because they were abusing us. I had a cop come to my home with bolt cutters and cut his way through my front fence. He cut a chain without probable cause and threw the link in the ditch. And then gets up to my house and opens the front door, and I'm like, what the hell is going on, That's the kind of stuff I'm speaking out against. I'm a quiet person. I barely sit down to even talk to anybody in person. I don't go to bars or have nightlife or anything like that. I'm an introvert. And this is my way of getting my message out there.